Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Back in the early 2000s, gaming became more popular than ever before with the release of the 6th generation of consoles, with the PS2 still being the best-selling console of all time. However, the price tag prevented a lot of people from affording those consoles and games, meaning that free flash games also massively gained in popularity, with many still being talked about today. One of these is Motherload. Releasing sometime in 2004 by X-Gen Studios, Motherload is a mining-based resource gathering game, where the resources gathered by the player are then sold to purchase upgrades and other items for their mining pod. This then allows the player to dig deeper and find more expensive materials, continuing the loop, with the game's ultimate goal of digging deep enough to find the Motherload. In this video, I'll be reviewing the game to see if it truly deserves its reputation as one of the most notorious flash games ever made. In order to do so, I'll be considering these 5 pieces of criteria: the game's core gameplay mechanics, the story, the balancing, the sound and art design, and the replayability. With Motherload releasing around 22 years ago, I will make sure that I review these aspects as fairly as possible, whilst also considering the modern audience. Therefore, I'll be judging these criteria using my most recent playthrough, so no nostalgia involved here. Also, the long play session has been uploaded to my second channel, which is linked down below in the description. And with all that established, I hope you enjoy the video. Motherload immediately opens with this simple, gritty title card, where the player can either start a new game, load a save, or view the instructions, which are called the Pod Usage 101. The instructions tell the player that they can control their pod using WASD or the arrow keys, which isn't entirely true. In the options in-game, you can choose to use mouse controls, where holding down the mouse button in a direction determines what you do. Also, the instructions tell the player that your drill will deploy automatically if you move into diggable material beside or below you. Remember, you cannot drill straight up. This is because the mining pod has a propeller which allows it to fly upwards. The fact that you can't drill straight up means that you have to be very careful with your mining tunnels in order to gather resources, which I actually quite like as a game mechanic, because the player actually has to pay attention to what they're doing as opposed to just mindlessly digging through. We are also warned that running out of fuel causes a fatal malfunction, which I definitely kept in mind the entire time. Yep. Definitely. Then the instructions explain how to earn money, save our game, upgrade our pod, and purchase items. And then we are bombarded with hotkeys for each item, which are a bit hard to use as the keys are across the keyboard. But at the very least, the keys themselves are pretty easy to remember. I for inventory, R to deploy the repair nanobots, F for the reserve fuel tank, C for plastic explosives, aka C4, Q for the quantum teleporter, M for the matter transmitter, and X for dynamite, aka explosives. All in all, the instructions do a pretty good job at explaining how the game works for someone that's never played, so I don't have any issues there at all. Upon starting a new game, we are dropped off onto Mars's surface and we meet our boss, Mr. Natas.
We forgot to refuel you on the way over. Drive over to the fuel station and fill her up. It's been almost impossible to hire decent miners on Mars since all the strange activities started happening around here. That's why we're willing to pay you at a premium for your services. I've given you a basic mining machine to get started with. Unfortunately, you'll be on your own from this point onward, as the settlers who were lucky enough to escape with their lives have fled to safety. However, all of the shops around here have been computerized, so you should still be able to sell your minerals, fuel up, upgrade your pod, and buy special items. Remember, Your job is to collect minerals back to the surface for processing. The deeper you dig, the more valuable the minerals you'll encounter. Don't forget to refuel. Good luck!
This introduction sets the game's premise quite nicely. He's willing to pay us well for our services, and we want to reach the Motherload. Win-win. Plus, the fact that all the shops are computerized is nice yet simple world building. I really like the goofiness of the names for these stores, as they sound exactly like what I would have called them when I was about 6 years old. From left to right on the surface, we have the Propellant Vendor 12,000 to refuel our mining pod, the Mineral Processor 3,000 to sell our mining haul, the Quantum Particle State Analyzer 6,000 to save our game, the Auto Buy 2,000 to upgrade our pod, and the Emendation Station 3,500 to buy items and repair our pod. How futuristic. I'll talk more about what we can buy after we get a bit of money. So, without further ado, let's fuel up and get mining. To start off, we just pick a decent spot to dig down and just grab what we can. Brilliant. And I didn't save, so now I just have to restart. So how does saving work for this game? Back when Flash was still around, you could create an X-Gen account with a username and password to save your game. This system meant that a person could have an infinite number of saves if they wanted. I played this game on Flashpoint Archive, and I'm happy to say that you can indeed still save your game, as your username and password get saved on your local computer. I was quite surprised by this because I just assumed that it wouldn't work. Anyway, back to digging. As Mr. Natas explained earlier, the deeper we go, the better resources we can find. With only Ionium, Bronzium, Silverium, and Goldium available at the upper levels. These are worth $30, $60, $100, and $250 each. With these, we can afford to refuel our pod at only $1 a litre and repair our pod for $15 per health restored. For reference, we start the game with a 10 litre fuel tank and 10 HP. And so, we can very easily profit after a mining trip, even taking off the repairing and refueling prices. This then allows us to build up some funds and upgrade our mining unit, with 6 things that we can upgrade. These are the drill, which increases our drilling speed, obviously, the hull, which increases our health, the engines, which increase our horsepower, allowing us to carry more materials and increasing our movement speed, the fuel tank, which increases the amount of fuel we can carry, the radiator, which reduces the damage that we take from lava and natural gas pockets, which we encounter in the lower levels. And finally, the cargo bay, which increases the amount of minerals that we can carry before having to sell. If we gather any materials once the cargo bay is full, these just get deleted and don't count towards our total at all. There are 6 tiers of upgrades, with the radiator missing the first tier and the cargo bay missing the final tier. The cost of each upgrade is the same as the value of the remaining materials, so I'll call them by said material, even if the actual upgrade names are a little bit different. Platinum tier upgrades cost $750. Einsteinium tier upgrades cost $2,000. Emerald tier upgrades cost $5,000. Ruby tier upgrades cost $20,000. Diamond tier upgrades cost $100,000, and finally Amazonite tier upgrades cost $500,000. A funny thing to mention is that the player can downgrade their mining pod if they wanted, as there's nothing preventing them from just purchasing any lower tier upgrades, which is a massive oversight by the devs. Also, as you can probably tell, the earlier materials and upgrades get massively outscaled in value compared to the endgame, making our efforts in the early game feel a little redundant. However, we can get a lot of money in the early game for some upgrades if we find a rare artifact. These can be found at roughly any depth, and we can skip the entire early game if we can find the most valuable one, the religious artifact. At $50,000, we can immediately buy the 60-litre fuel tank, the ruby drill, and both the tier 3 cargo hold and engine upgrades from a fully stock mining unit. That's 2 tier 4 upgrades and 2 tier 3 upgrades at the beginning of the game. These upgrades allow our mining unit to go about halfway down the map, making it much more powerful. However, the other artifacts aren't as great. The Martian skeleton, which is valued at 10,000, can be a nice boost towards a tier 4 upgrade. The treasure, at $5,000, can immediately purchase a tier 3 upgrade if needed. But the final artifact, the dinosaur bones, are practically useless as they're only valued at $1,000. But still, even with artifacts taking us into the mid-game, we need to reach the more expensive materials to purchase the higher tier upgrades. So we need to go deeper. But before that, there is still one more way to get a cash bonus at the start of the game. If the player digs below a depth of 500 feet and then a depth below 1,000 feet, they receive a transmission from Mr. Natas rewarding them with a one-off cash bonus of $1,000 and $3,000 respectively.
Good! I see you're adapting well to the Martian soil. Here's a little something to help you on your way.
These bonuses mean that even if the player doesn't get lucky and find an artifact, they can still prioritize digging straight down and grabbing whatever is next to them to rush through a good chunk of the early game. However, there's some details that I want to highlight in this second transmission.
Congratulations on reaching a depth of 1,000 feet. I've wired you a bonus for your excellent work. We're picking up some heavy vibrations from the planet core. They seem to be causing some earthquakes. They also seem to be causing some garbled and misdirected transmissions. Just ignore them. Keep up the good work.
These earthquakes are actually a rare event when exiting a shop. They reset the underground, forcing the player to dig their tunnels again from scratch. Honestly, I think that this is a cool feature from a world-building perspective, as it adds on from the strange activity that Mr. Natas mentioned at the start of the game. However, if you get as unlucky as me, then this cool feature becomes an annoyance, as after redigging all my tunnels, I then have to do the same all over again. How fun. In my opinion, there should be a cooldown between how often they can happen. As we progress deeper and deeper, we start to receive some of those transmissions that Mr. Natas was talking about. The first one is from an unidentified source, who seemingly just meets a terrible end.
The eyes! Oh my god! The eyes!
Something much more sinister is clearly going on around here, but the prospect of finding the Motherload is just too tempting. So we continue on. After digging down a few hundred more feet, we receive another transmission. This time, we know the source. It's from Martian Digging Pod number 3422-2.
I'm surprised to find another signal around here. I'm the only miner who hasn't disappeared in the past 3 years. Next week, I finally get to retire, wealthy, to the moons of Jupiter with my wife and 3 daughters.
It's strange that we never actually see another miner throughout the entire game, but these small pockets could have been tunnels made by other miners which have since caved in because of the earthquakes. Even still, it's cool that we have a friend down here. Hopefully, this guy makes it through the week so he can retire happily with his family. After digging down some more, another unidentified source makes contact with us, screaming for help.
Is anyone there? I need help badly. I can't feel my legs. Oh God, he's coming back. Oh no, please help me.
Wait, he's coming back? Who could it be that's killing these miners? At this point, we're spending a fair bit of time down in these tunnels, and the cost of upgrades is scaling up very quickly. So it might be worth it to start buying some items, starting with the incredibly overpowered reserve fuel tank. This allows us to refuel our pod with 25 litres of fuel at any time for only $2,000. As the 25 litre fuel tank upgrade is $5,000, being able to completely refuel whenever we like means that we never have to upgrade our fuel tank again. Or at the very least, just not prioritise upgrading it. The hull repair nanobots heal 30 HP, and so these are incredibly useful to prevent an accidental game over. But they're pretty steep at a cost of $7,500 each. This is $250 per HP restored, much more than the $15 at the emendation station 3,500. However, these are practically mandatory for the late game, which will become very obvious soon. There are also 2 explosives which we can purchase. Dynamite blows up all blocks in a 3x3 radius, which for $2,000 is not as cost effective as plastic explosives, which can blow everything up in a 5x5 radius for $5,000. However, dynamite definitely still does have a use. As we can't dig upwards, we can use these explosives to create pathways which avoid rocks and lava in order to grab resources. Also, similarly to the nanobots, these explosives are required to finish the game, so we're forced to purchase some anyway. Finally, we have the 2 teleporters, the quantum teleporter and the matter transmitter, which are priced at $2,000 and $10,000 respectively. I personally never used the quantum teleporter as I didn't like the risk of taking fall damage because I would typically teleport when my health was low. But I do see its use as a way to get out without spending as much as the matter transmitter. Therefore, I always made sure that I had at least one matter transmitter on me so I could escape in a pinch, which saved me from some very close calls, making it more than worth the price. Remember, I still didn't know that the saving feature actually still worked. So if I died, I would have had to play through the entire game all over again. And with the items established, let's continue digging down. Oh look, it's our friend again. This time, he warns us about the lava pockets that we've started to encounter, explaining that the radiator upgrades can help mitigate the damage.
How are you making it out, kid? I know you're new here, so I thought I'd give you a tip. Make sure you don't neglect your radiator. I ran into a lava pocket a few moments ago, but my twin turbines dissipated the heat amazingly, and my hull was barely damaged. Probably saved my life.
We should probably take his advice, as even just spending $20,000 on the 4th tier upgrade puts us in a position where we can survive if we accidentally dig into lava. But who would do that? After a few hundred more feet, we hear back from Mr. Natas.
Once again, congratulations! You've made it farther than even I anticipated. Anyways, I've sent you another bonus. Watch out for natural gas pockets. They're undetectable and highly explosive. One more thing. Your altimeter is only rated for a depth of around 6,000 feet. After that, you'll need to turn back. Really, it's just too dangerous.
He's seemingly looking out for us, warning us about the risk of hitting a natural gas pocket and telling us that once we reach around 6,000 feet, we can easily lose track of how far down we are. But he still clearly wants us to continue, with him giving us another bonus. This time, only $25,000. Not nothing, of course, but not a lot considering this point in the game, as by now we're probably looking at some of the 5th tier upgrades, which cost 4 times as much as that. But still, every little bit helps. We can probably use this bonus for some items instead, especially since dynamite and plastic explosives can prevent us from hitting a natural gas pocket. After continuing down a bit further, we meet our friend again and... oh no.
Trapped. In a crevice. Earthquake damaged my drill and I'm out of fuel. This will probably be my last transmission. Tell my kids I love them. What? You? What are you doing to... Ah!
The man was this close to retirement, his poor wife and kids. But still, we've got a job to do, so we keep digging. As we reach 4,500 feet, we get another transmission.
Oh, baby! This is it! I hit the Motherload! I'm rich! I'm filthy rich! Hey, what the... No! No, it can't be! Oh God!
Is death all that awaits us down here? No, we've dug so far already, we have to be close. We just have to keep going. It'll all be worth it. Now, as we continue to dig down, gathering more materials and upgrading our mining unit, radio silence. Just us, the last mining unit on Mars, trying to reach what everyone else couldn't. Who did our friend see before he died? He definitely recognized them, but who could it be? Then, as we approach 6,000 feet, our barometer begins to glitch out, just like Mr. Natas said. And then, not long after, we hear from him once again. Except this time, he's not happy.
You are violating the terms of your employment. Turn back immediately.
Wait, wasn't this our job? Something's not right with this guy. Whatever, we came here for that Motherload, and that is what we're going to do. Oh, he's back again.
Return to the surface immediately, or you'll be terminated. As in fired.
Was that a slip by him? Is he really the one that's been going around killing everybody? But why? We're mining for his factories. Surely he just made a mistake, right? How did he even get down here anyway? It doesn't matter, I have to get that Motherload. Bit by bit, we continue mining down until we reach the bottom. We can't dig through the ground here, so we mine through what we can until we reach a hull on the far right-hand side of the map. Finally, surely we've reached the Motherload.
You fool! I told you to turn back. Now I guess I have no choice but to kill you. You've served my factories well, but I think I'll take my machine, my money, and your pathetic life now. See you in hell!
Damn. Should have seen that coming. Wait a minute, how am I going to fight him? Surely my drill's gonna help? Yeah, no. Wait a minute, let's just blow him up.
seal. You really think you can defeat me? I am the master of all evil. Behold my true form.
A second phase. What? Now he's got a new look, a couple more attacks, and 2,000 more health. But, I mean, okay, we've already dealt 1,000 damage. What's 2,000 more? Wait, I died? That's not supposed to happen. Okay, right, no worries. I can just load my save, right? Well, I still thought that feature didn't work, so no. But, okay, at least it shouldn't take too long to get back there, right? Just gotta not make any silly mistakes again. Oh. Okay, well, I can just find a few artifacts and steamroll my way back to the boss, right? It's like this game hates me. Just before fighting Mr. Natas again, I finally realised that I could have just saved this entire time and saved like 2 hours. Oh well, I've got a score to settle against this guy. Get nuked. Get fucked. Get fucked. I'm done. Easy. Easy. Easiest game of my life, actually. Easy. Yeah? Yeah? We fucking did it, boys. Easy fucking clap. Get fucked. Get fucked, Satan. Easy. Hell yeah. Beating the boss gives you his fit and cane as well as a lot of points. And after all that, no more funny business, we've finally reached the Motherload. Wait a minute, where's all our stuff? Why is my mining pod back to its stock upgrades? After looking in our inventory, we can see that we have Satan's head, which means that we're in New Game Plus. Every time you defeat Satan, the game changes bit by bit. So, time for a quick Motherload maths lesson. Woo! Treating X as the number of times that Satan is defeated, minerals are worth 1 divided by X plus 1. So Amazonite is worth 50% of its original value in New Game Plus, 33% in New Game Plus 2, etc. The points given by digging are now multiplied by X plus 1, so the score value is 200% in New Game Plus, 300% in New Game Plus 2, 400% in New Game Plus 3, etc. Also, both the damage taken from Satan and Satan's health are also multiplied by X plus 1, making the game literally impossible to beat once he's able to one-shot us. And so, that's everything in the main game to talk about. Well, almost everything. It turns out that there are built-in cheats in the game that the player can use. If you open the options menu and then type in the following codes, you'll receive certain rewards. Bling Bling, which adds $100,000. Every bling afterwards adds another 100,000. Untouchable, which upgrades your equipment to max and gives 99 of every item. Filler Up refuels your pod, Supersize, which upgrades the cargo bay to the next upgrade, Dig Dug, which upgrades the drill to the next upgrade, Warp 9, which upgrades the engine to the next upgrade, Guzzle, which upgrades the fuel tank to the next upgrade, Penetrable, which upgrades the hull to the next upgrade, and finally Too Cool, which upgrades the radiator to the next upgrade. Meaning that, for all intents and purposes, the only cheat that is worth using when messing around is Untouchable. But still, it's fun that the devs made a way for people to mess around with the game, even if I think it would be better if there was a bit more variety. Either way, using any of these cheats invalidates the player's score, marking them as a cheater and prevents them from saving. This is honestly one of my favourite things in the game. It's a great way to provide additional fun for the players without ruining the spirit of the high scores. Which, as you may have noticed from my last video, that you should totally watch after this one by the way, I do care about. And that's the game. Well, depending on the version you're playing. I just played version 0.937 of Motherload, which is most likely the version that many of you would have played years ago. However, there is an official paid version called the Goldium Edition, which is actually free if you purchase the sequel, Super Motherload, on Steam. Most of you probably didn't even know that that game existed. I sure didn't until I started making this video. I had a whole other section written in the script which talks about the Goldium Edition, but I figured that it would be a somewhat dishonest review if I spoke about something that I didn't experience. So I'm replacing it with this mini advert for you to play the game yourself. Sorry, not sorry. Motherload Goldium Edition really is the complete Motherload experience. There's new upgrades to collect, a new challenge mode, new music, new characters, and even more fun. So if any of you like the sound of this version of the game, or if you want to support the original devs, then please feel free to purchase the Goldium Edition either on XGen Studios' official website, or by purchasing Super Motherload on Steam. There's a good chance that XGen Studios also made some of your other favourite Flash games, so in my eyes, they definitely deserve the support. Now, let's take a minute to review the game as a whole, using the 5 points that I defined earlier, starting with the core gameplay mechanics. As explained before, the core gameplay itself is very simple. You start the game by digging into the ground to gather resources. These are then sold to purchase upgrades, allowing the player to dig deeper to gather more expensive resources. However, since running out of hull health or fuel results in a game over, the player has to act with caution whilst gathering these resources. This is further exemplified by the lava pockets and natural gas pockets, which force the player to use the items instead of solely relying on upgrades. Said items are then used in the final boss fight, which is a very natural progression of gameplay, as the player now has an understanding of how to use them. The hitbox for Mr. Natas is definitely a bit off, but I do like the idea for the boss fight, even if it's the only game's instance of combat. All in all, for a free Flash game made in 2004, I really think that the game excels with this criteria. The story is easy to follow, but pretty clever. The transmissions slowly fill you in on what's happening on Mars, whilst also providing an early game reward. This perfectly encourages the player to continue digging further down to progress. Also, the friend that we gain over the course of the game, and his unfortunate death, unexpectedly adds some emotion to the game. Then, the large gap between receiving transmissions towards the end of the game shows the player that they are now all alone as the final mining pod on Mars. This silence is then broken by Mr. Natas, where he gives some subtle foreshadowing that he's behind these events. However, his name makes that fact so obvious that it defeats the point. This isn't inherently a bad thing, as the goofiness of that is very similar to other games' humour around that time. so I'll let it slide. The balancing, however, is the first point which I feel quite negatively about. In my opinion, if X-Gen Studios ever made a remake, this is what they should focus on. The cost scaling of all the mining resources and the early game rewards given by Mr. Natas both mean that the player can skip huge chunks of the game with some luck, ruining the pacing. As said before, I do like the early game rewards from a story perspective, so that gets a pass. However, the late game doesn't get that same courtesy. Natural gas pockets are supposed to prevent the player from just rushing through the late game, especially since both their damage and frequency scale with depth. But do they do their job? Let's have a look. Natural gas pockets begin to spawn at roughly 4,750 feet underground, which is about 2/3 of the way down the map. But they are unable to spawn inside a mineral block, so the player is always safe to collect something next to them. On screen is the maximum depth the player can go without instantly dying from a gas pocket with different hull and radiator upgrades. As you may notice, having a diamond tier hull and radiator means that the player can never die from a singular natural gas pocket at full health. Now on screen is the value of each mineral and the estimated depths where they begin to spawn and where they then become quite common. By this point in the game, it's reasonable for the player to have some ruby tier and even diamond tier upgrades, so you may be able to notice the issue. At this depth, the player is already able to focus on using explosives to go even deeper, with Amazonite not too far away. The moment the player finds a single Amazonite, they can upgrade their remaining upgrades to diamond tier and spend the rest on more items, leading to a fully upgraded mining pod very quickly. So I think it's safe to say that this deterrent doesn't work properly. So what would I change to fix this? Ideally, the artifacts would scale with depth, similarly to the mining resources, so religious artifacts can't be found very early into the game. Also, to make every resource feel like they deserve to exist, the amount gained by each resource would be scaled differently too. Looking at you, Ionium and Dinosaur Bones. To match this, the upgrades and items would then need their costs adjusting too. With these changes, natural gas pockets will feel like a genuine obstacle, while still teaching the player the importance of using items to prepare them for the boss fight. Honestly, everything else is pretty balanced, so I feel like these changes would have been easy to implement in development. The sound and art design are dated, but in a good way. The dark colour palette suits the game very nicely, helping create an immersive experience for the player. This is then enhanced from the sound effects from receiving transmissions, purchasing things in the shops, and using items. Although this experience is affected by the jarring cut between the game's different music tracks, the music itself is perfect for what it's used for. Except the main music loop. Over the course of a full playthrough, this goes from sounding quite cool to being annoying and repetitive. In my eyes, it would be cool if the music was affected by the player's current depth. Similarly to how We Play Tanks' music is affected by the current tanks in the level. But that might be asking for a bit too much. It would be cool to see this in a remake, but it's really not essential. Finally, Motherload does have quite a bit of replayability, despite the issues with the game's balancing. The fact that the world is procedurally generated guarantees that no two playthroughs are the same. which is a massive plus for a game with such a simple gameplay loop. To me, the fun yet surprisingly deep story, the simple gameplay, the humour, and the gritty sound and art design total up to a very immersive, addicting experience which people keep coming back to for that nostalgic hit, myself included. And so, to summarise, Motherload is definitely worth its reputation as one of the most influential Flash games of all time, despite its flaws. Its legacy has undeniably inspired some of the most popular indie games since, and to me it's clear to see why. Therefore, I absolutely recommend for anyone to play this game at least once. And that is Motherload. If you would like to play this game for yourself, you can play it and many other Flash games on the Flashpoint archive. Or if you want the original experience, you can play it on websites such as crazygames.com. As mentioned before, you can play the Goldium Edition for free after purchasing Super Motherload on Steam. Also, if you guys would like me to make a video on Super Motherload or Motherload Goldium Edition, then please let me know. Thank you all so much for watching this video. It means so much to me that you decided to watch this far, as it's a massive help for the channel. But if you'd like to show any additional support, then please make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. I'm already working on the next video, so hopefully that should be out soon. But anyway, thank you all again so much for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.